Hello, I'm Mary Nightingale. Welcome to the Piper podcast, How I Grew My Brand. Here we talk to successful founders about how they built their businesses, how the idea was born, how they nurtured it with all the growing pains, challenges, key decisions and mistakes they made along the way, and the good fortune they had on the journey to becoming a brand legend. With me today is Tom Molnar, CEO and co-founder of Gail's, the upmarket artisan bakers and coffee shops founded in London in the early noughties. 20 years later, Gail's is in more than 170 locations, including in Waitrose, largely, but not exclusively, in the south of England. Their stated aspiration, I'm quoting from their website here, is to play our part to bring humanity back into the food world and back to local communities. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
So, upmarket artisan bakers, fair?
Well, I've heard the term many times. I've also heard the word posh. Look, we just do things well. I mean, upmarket is not the right description of us.
Does it grate a little bit?
It does. We're not, this is food. Food is good and bad and better, and we're better. And it's not a Chanel bag. I appreciate, if you're well-meaning, that it looks good and that the places are good, and they should be, because they should reflect all the effort that's put into our product. The place matters, but upmarket is the wrong term.
I will not use upmarket again.
All right, thank you.
So who is Gail?
Gail's a food pioneer. I met her in the early 2000s. She started this little craft bakery that was stunning. Had amazing customers, serving high-end food, restaurants and chefs. And so it's a chef-led craft bakery that she'd worked on for 10 years. She assembled 35 people to execute that every day. And I met her in the middle of that. And I guess I bought into her ethos. We need better food in this society, and society will be better for it. And, that means you got to care about the ingredients. You got to care about the people who make stuff. And we have to get back to something that's less driven by non-food people, I guess, or people that are trying to achieve something else besides health and joy.
So in this world, there are food people and there are not food people. Yeah,
it's never that clear of a distinction, I guess. Sometimes, and I don't like to kind of create tribes or teams, people against each other. But yeah, I think there are people that understand that food is fundamental and important. And I think there's a group of people that think it's a product. And then there's a whole bunch of people in between. And so I think what we're trying to do is to represent the side that says food is important. And one of the efforts we take on is just that we will try to communicate why food is important.
Okay, we're going to talk much, much more about that and how you turn that ethos into a fantastically successful business. But first, a little bit more about Tom. Who are you? Where did you come from? What was life like?
Well, I grew up in Florida, and I think I straddled two worlds. My life in the 80s in the U.S. was very much fast food and, get $5 and go get a taco down the street. And that was feeding your family. My grandfather, on the other hand, and my grandparents were first-generation immigrants from Poland and Sicily. And they were really into their food, but we didn't live really close to them. So I really got to understand what it meant to really enjoy food and celebrate food and it being a really integral part of your life and your social fabric. And then another life in Florida, which was the modern life, which was assemble stuff, eat it really fast, and get on with your life. And I think living with those two things has made me very, very curious about what is the best way to live.
Famously, I think your grandmother introduced you to great bread, which she used to make.
My great-grandma. Grandma bread.
Grandma bread, exactly.
Yeah.
So explain that that connection, the magic of that great bread made by grandma bread.
Yeah, we must, most of us seem to have that when you talk to people, something around food that just hits you. But I remember walking into her, her very humble home and, just this beautiful smell of a pugliese type bread. And it was warm and she'd sit you down and she'd bring some beautiful butter and she'd just get it while it's hot.
It's so evocative, that, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it's that early experience of food kind of being associated with love and security and warmth and comfort.
Yeah, and look, I often can't remember where I left my phone, but I can remember every little single thing in that room, what that oven looked like, what her smile looked like, everything. And she lived till she was, we think 105.
maybe we can actually assume from that bread is good for you.
Good food is good for you, and good bread probably is part of that good food. Yes, absolutely.
So a warm family, a close family. What about your education in the early career?
So I studied aquatic ecology, and I was really interested in water systems. And I grew up in the mangrove swamps of Florida, Central Florida, and I really appreciated nature and enjoyed nature. So I studied aquatic ecology, and I wanted to be a fish farmer. But I just couldn't find a job, and I couldn't figure it out. So I took this job that was with a food business called Cargill, and they put me into trading. But it was great for 9 years. I learned quite a bit, but I needed to get out. So I went surfing for almost a year. Went to business school, went to McKinsey, then took off a little bit more. But I never really forgot about what would I really want to do. I wanted to do something around food. I met my wife. She's Italian, and when you're an Italian wife in an Italian family, it is largely about what you're going to have for lunch and what you're going to have for dinner, and the quality of your life is often determined by how well you're eating. I did go to some good schools, and I always thought that you need to leverage that to do something meaningful. My grandfather had no education at all. He pushed a vegetable truck. He had his own grocery stores with his brothers. He had no education at all, but yet he really helped shape a community around Philadelphia and brought very good food to his part of Pennsylvania with no education. And I remember him telling me, if you get an education, you have to do better. Do better than I did. I said, okay.
And did you feel that obligation?
I felt
succeed
that deep obligation. In my hometown, which is a small town in Florida, it's a very entrepreneurial environment, where...
It's Cocoa Beach, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Cocoa Beach, yeah. It's not a big, it's not Miami. It's really small town, Central Florida. But just people get on and they just do stuff. And I remember some guy telling me, grades don't matter. It's what you get done in your life, So if you think grades are your end point, you're lost.
So this was a huge influence from your grandparents. What about your parents themselves? Was there ever an expectation that you had to be successful, however success was defined?
Yeah, I think there's probably two things that happened. One is we were from, like a lot of Americans, from the North in the 70s, and we moved south, and that was like, oh my God, there's no museums, there's no that. And, they came, my mother came from Philadelphia, and so she thought she was going into, nowhere land. So there was a culture shock, even though you can't imagine maybe now, but it was a big culture shock to move from the North to the South. Second thing is my dad's an entrepreneur, and, he had two or three times where we were nearly bankrupt. The guy was in the living room telling us that, we might lose our house. We would go to breakfast and there'd be no orange juice, just water, everything under $2. And, you had to be disciplined because, we didn't make it, it didn't work.
But like a true entrepreneur, he went again. Yeah.
And I remember him, mowing the lawn, of the football pitch for, $40 a week because that's all the job that he could find. But he never gave up.
I speak to entrepreneurs on this podcast, and what fascinates me about the breed, if you like, it's a determination never to give up. A lot of us, I think, if we went bankrupt or close to it, would be so frightened that'd be it. We'd just go and get a 9 to 5 and stick at it forever just to be safe. But entrepreneurs don't seem to think like that.
Yeah, well, I think that's their role. I don't think, it's scary. I mean, I could have even, so I had my grandfather who was successful, but worked really hard. My dad worked really hard, had a lot of failures, but eventually had a success. But yeah, it's a scary ride. That doesn't make entrepreneurs heroes, but in that, whatever that chemistry is that builds a business, you need to have somebody, I guess, who will just knows how to ride out the storms. And I would say, I am not the smartest person in my business, and we have incredible craftspeople all around me. I don't do it on my own, right? It is a team, but my role maybe is to make sure that we have less dips than more, and that we ride out the dips.
So you have to be an optimist.
Yeah, it's like throwing a party. Like you say, okay, we're going to have a party, and this is what the party's going to be. It's going to be an apple party, or whatever. In our case, it's, craft food and, seriously good, healthy food. And then people say, yeah, I'll come in, I'll bring this and I'll bring that, and I'll bring that, I'll bring the music and I'll do this. And then if the party dips, You're the one that started it, so you got to say, hey, guys, let's do shots of tequila or whatever we do. Whatever it does to get the party going again. And how long you can make that party last is maybe that's your job. It certainly isn't to do everything. You are there to help be an important part of something, of solving a problem, most likely. But you're not the hero of the game. You're a important character. But I don't want to be a hero, and I don't think most entrepreneurs do. I think they want to solve a problem that they think is interesting, solvable, but challenging, and maybe not solvable.
I hear what you say, and I'm interested that there's kind of modesty there, because I think actually quite a lot of entrepreneurs love being the hero. They love being the star in their own movie, the name above the door. You're not the name above the door. Gail's the name above the door. But they like the feeling of, yeah, I did that. I'm the guy.
Yeah, you should feel a certain pride on that, but I think those are the people we hear about, maybe.
Yeah, because they tell you, right?
Yeah, because they tell you, and then they're the people that maybe make the news. But you've met lots of people. There's a huge spectrum. I do think you do have to feel like I'm making some progress.
It's confidence, isn't it?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and you do have to have that. I mean, I think you absolutely have to have humility. Any entrepreneur that doesn't have humility, I think, is just not been in it long enough.
Okay, let's look at a bit more detail on the growth of the business itself. Piper has this 7-17-70 theory. Okay, and it's the inflection points at which growing businesses will need a step change. Like sales figures or number of sites or perhaps employees. So first of all, does that chime with you, and how does that fit with the Gail story?
Yeah, of course it chimes to me. If it's not exactly the number, still I get it. I totally get those phases. And, if you could think about when we had like 7 bakers doing stuff, I remember I got a chef called and they were like, hey, I got something big going on tomorrow. Can you double my order of like sourdoughs? These are long fermentation sourdoughs. And I guess it was probably like 9:00 at night and I'm at the bakery. And so I was like, anything for you, chef, right? I'm like, whatever you need. I go down to the guys, guys, we need to do, I think it was potato rosemary. Like, we need to double it. And doubling it was like doing 10 more. And the guy's like, nope, can't do it. I was like, what do you mean, Ramik? We can't do it. This is an amazing chef, one of the top chefs, one of our top customers. He needs some help. It's like, mother dough. It's going to hurt it, and I don't want to take a risk.
I didn't even know what you're talking about. What is a mother dough?
So basically, the yeast, the mother dough that we use to
this is a
the
sourdough
yeast for the
thing.
for the next generation of bread. So we have a living culture, right, of yeast, and that's used to make the next loaf of bread. You can stretch it, right, a little bit, but it was so small, and this order, even if like it's 10 or maybe it's 15, extra, loaves, was just so big relative to that they didn't want to hurt the mother dough, which is something you need to take care of.
Protect the mother dough.
Yeah, and I understood that, but I was like, but this is a top chef, and so I had to go back to him, and I said, like, okay. Can't do it because it'll, we're worried about stretching the mother dough too far. And he's like, oh, I could totally get that. That's fine. What else can you do for me? And that's when I really realized I knew nothing. Yeah. Right? I knew the mother dough was important. I knew the chef was important. I trusted and respected the person that was there because Gail told me that respect these guys. And I had learned very quickly that they know things I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I just realized how far behind I was. And I think that was one of my moments that just
was an inflection point for you.
Yeah. Okay. You may be kind of running this business, but you're not. You better be listening a lot more than you ever imagined that you would do. And that was an early lesson, and that's my 7.
So where are you now in terms of employee numbers, turnover figures, sites?
So we're about 182 sites, close to 300 million pounds revenue. We sell to chefs and wholesale. That's how we started. So we started as a small craft bakery serving chefs. We still do that. I love that part of the world. It's very professional. People know what they're doing, and we love to serve these great chefs. And then we serve some grocery because that's where people buy a lot of their food. So I think we got to be there.
So you're in Waitrose, aren't you?
Yeah, we're in Waitrose. So. But we're not there in a big way. Hopefully, I'm happy to be there in a bigger way if they want and good bread. And then we built this thing. We started this thing 20 years ago, which was our version of what we think a bakery on the high street should be. We are growing at about over 20% per year. We have over 4,000 people now. Started at like 35, 22 years ago. Gail did the first decade on her own and built it to 35. That's like a gift that you can never, ever really repay. And then we worked the next 10 years together. So working on the wholesale with the chefs. Then, with her, we started the first couple Gails. And we got to like 7 when she kind of generously sold her part back to me and a friend and to the team.
So at that point, 7.
Yeah.
And then when did the main period of growth occur? When, that 7 to 17 sites, for example, how did that work? Can you remember?
Yes, sure. It was with a lot of pain because I think we were great bakers, and we've always been great bakers. We knew what we were doing, and we were selling to top chefs. But how do you sell stuff? And I still think that we're working on that muscle.
You're listening to the Piper Podcast with me, Mary Nightingale. With me today is Tom Molnar, CEO and co-founder of Gail's.
I think some people, when we first started Gail's, were like, posh bakery, this and that. Well, no, but we just thought about our design. But our design is built to be very kind of cost effective.
But you're not by any means a budget outlet, are you?
No.
No,
but why would I create a place to sell like some of the world's best bread and make it, and not think about the place?
Of course.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the bricks and mortar and the way it looked and the way it felt. And was that something that you came upon gradually, or did it come as an inspiration? When did you realise, this is what a Gail should look like?
Yeah, okay, all right.
And how it should feel?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I did like 2 or 3 years, we were just working with the chefs. And then, but we were bubbling around like, we want to build a brand of bread. Like great bread shouldn't just be for great chefs. It should be available to a wider audience, So we said, let's build a place that's a celebration of bread. And we didn't build a place at first. We did a bunch of markets in Notting Hill. We went back to McKinsey and sold, on the way out of the door in the afternoons on Fridays. Any time we could sell bread and learn about how to do that, we did it.
And where was your first retail site?
The first real site was in Hampstead. It'll be 20 years this year.
So you had a vision of how it was going to be.
Yeah. I couldn't understand why everybody couldn't have great bread. Right? I said there must be an opportunity there. And if you looked around then, there was Paul's, Pain Quotidien, Maison Blanc. Everything was French. Anything you could get up, better bread seemed to be French and all Frenchified and like a French country house. But we're not French. We were, Israeli, Australian, American, Italian. We were everything. And so we said, well, we're going to be a British bakery.
But you're not British.
No.
Where does this come from?
I am now.
Okay, you are now.
But yes,
but
you
weren't
didn't
then.
raise. No, I know.
So why this? How this determination to make a British brand?
Yeah, maybe it was a London brand at first. We didn't imagine that we would have how many we have now and how many people, right? So we were just hoping to have 1, and then 3, and then 7, and then, So at that time, imagining this brand, we said British it holds a lot, right? But London even holds even more diversity, right? And so it's okay to be London. But the big question was, would anybody buy bread from a London baker when you could buy it from a French guy? And we just said, well, we can't lie. We have to be authentic from the start. And so it was building a brand that was going to celebrate amazing bread that was chef quality, and it wasn't going to lean on the French heritage because we had none. And we couldn't lie about it. And if you're going to start a brand, the worst thing to do is to start out with a lie. Mm. Then we were trying to figure out the name for the thing, and we were just like, we had Fat Fingers, Bread Moment, which the acronym is BM, which is not really great.
Yeah, that's a good name.
It's like, it was all like we spent a lot of time and a lot of energy, a lot of late nights trying to think about what it was called. And I remember going to Gail and just saying, "Do you mind if you started this whole thing? You brought together the first bakers. Do you mind if we do that?" And she said, "Yeah, just don't mess it up."
Did you ever kind of go to a branding agency, or was it something that happened organically in-house?
No, we had no money for that. I think I see too many people trying to spend too much money on things that they probably could sort out themselves, especially early days. If you're going to be a good food place for us, you need to put money into food, which means you can't spend too much on rent, you can't spend too much on fees, you can't spend too much on central costs. It needs to go into the food, the ingredients, and the people that make the food, and you have to stay pretty disciplined about that because there is like a whole world that kind of wants to, once you do achieve a little bit of success, there are a whole bunch of people that want to jump on that, and you have to say, there's no room to jump on it. Like if you want to serve it, then I welcome you with open arms. Serve this mission, serve these people and this idea, but you can't jump on. Oh, but I got a lot of stuff that can make it better. And I think I'd be really careful with that.
Did you make any mistakes along the way?
Yeah. You say that knowing that I made tons.
That's what's
Yeah,
called
just
the
like,
leading
which ones
question.
do I want to divulge, you
Well,
know?
exactly. Go on.
Yeah, like leaving my kids for hours and hours and hours, at home.
Business-wise, though,
Yeah.
like, did you make any dodgy hires? Did you go down a route that actually realised, no, because it's never as smooth as
for
it
sure.
sounds, is it?
No. Probably the one that I remember most, was probably the most meaningful, is we started, as we grew, it was getting really complex. And a lot of my business school friends or just colleagues and read stuff and like simplify things. You can grow, but you got to simplify. So we tried to simplify, but we began to lose the people that could handle the complication and didn't like a simple answer and we were pushing it a bit too far. Of course, you don't want to waste things, right? So when you simplify things to get rid of waste, absolutely need to do that. But when you're simplifying things and the product gets dumbed down a little bit, and you're like, it's just okay, or it's just a little bit.
You're talking about the product.
The product, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. So we went through a little bit of a simplification process, and I realized that if we were going to keep the best bakers, we're going to keep the best chefs, and we're going to keep the best thing, that you needed to accept and embrace complexity, not try to get rid of it. And you would find the people who would find the level of complexity that delivers really good stuff. And they weren't pushed to make it just simple, so it was easy and repeatable. That is actually hard. Like, so your job is difficult. You have to walk in every day and say, this is actually going to be quite difficult because I've got a lot of things that could go wrong. As a business person, you might decide, hey, I want to lower the bar. I want to make sure everybody gets over the bar, so I lower it a bit.
And how would that look in a Gail's term, like kind of fewer different types of bread, for example?
Could be that. It could be like take a sandwich and you take out 2 or 3 ingredients that are a bit hard to manage, and you're worried about portion sizes, or you're worried about the quality of ingredients so expensive that what happens if you waste it? Well, we decide that we're going to accept that challenge, that we will have the most expensive ingredient if it matters to that sandwich, and we will make sure that we have zero or close to zero waste on that, right? And that's embracing complexity rather than just saying people aren't good enough to manage it. Actually, there are really great people out there who really want a job that they feel proud of, and that usually takes effort, and a different effort that you need than just to get stuff done. And I think there's too many businesses built to make sure that people get through the day and with zero mistakes, rather than get through the day and feel like I did an amazing job.
But that's really difficult to manage as you grow, isn't it? If you've got a workforce of 7 or even 17, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But once you get big time, how do you maintain? And this is without even looking at the quality of the product itself. How do you get good people? How do you keep good people? How do you communicate and incentivize those good people and keep the ethos when you've got this? It's a big brand now. So how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, there's no silver bullet, first of all. I think that, you just need to have a culture around you that believes that these are the right things. Without that, you have nothing. You have to also have a lot of processes and systems. And that would be my 70 thing. Probably I was kept on going, and with this kind of dependence on people to come in and do an amazing job and to get it all really fast. And it did start to creak, quite a bit. And that was then we had to start bringing in some processes and some things that would, flags in the ground that people could say, okay, I'm going there. And I brought a whole bunch of team, 8 years ago that started saying, okay, great what you've done, but what chaos, and how could you double it? And I said, look, nobody thought I could double it to now, so why can't I double it now? And they're like, no, we need some written stuff down. We need some clarity. We need, if we're going to double the size now, then we can do it. I challenged them that why now? And probably I needed to have done it 2 or 3 years before, but we didn't. And but I think what it did do is it drew in a bunch of people who knew processes, knew operations, and knew all that stuff. And they were like, "This is like a great, what a great pool to be swimming in." If you want to apply some skills that you've learned somewhere else to something that is trying to be great, they got that we were trying to do something good and amazing.
And it's not as if you were just a bright-eyed boy in the world of business. You've been to business school.
Yeah,
you
right.
You knew the game. So it's, you have this fantastic enthusiasm. Of great bread and everything. You're a businessman. And so none of this was amateur time, was it?
Well,
let's be honest. I mean,
yeah.
You had to be hard-nosed about this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I had to tell, like, we had to kind of say, hey, we need to balance a little bit here. Like, if everything that we've created, everything that we believe in, and everything that we want, it can't survive without welcoming in a group of people that will help us. And I made sure that those people who were coming in to help us really knew that we just want help. Like, we don't want you to change us. We need your skills.
And so what were your key hires in those sort of early days exactly, but sort of middle period, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think, operations people, person to actually to run Gales. Because, I mean, that's like 180 sites. I don't know how to run that very well. I know how I want them to look, and I want them to what contribution I want them to have to society, but I don't really know how to operate those things.
So who did you bring in to do that?
Brought Marta Progreska in, and then Miranda Bergam for people, Elliot. And, we started building a team that could, I didn't, my first buyer, or the buyer that I had at the beginning was one of my cleaners that I had to do the purchasing. Right, but purchasing is super strategic to a business like us, and I had to get a professional in. But then you have to tell a professional, I want your professionalism and I want your skills, but I want you to look at the world through my lens.
I'm interested in the concept of success. So you had this winning formula. You knew that Gail's product was good. You had a vision of how you wanted to take the business into a retail space, and you made a success of that. At what point did you think, yes, we got this?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure you ever feel that way. I remember when my parents came to see me, and I took them to a Gale's, and they were just like, "Whoa," And I think that kind of hit me that somebody knew me well, kind of looked at that and just like that's interesting. They're proud of you. So that maybe, it's funny. It's simple as that. Even though you get tons of people to come in and say, hey, nice things, it still matters to you at in your 50s, 40s and 50s, what your parents think. Recently, I went to I gathered a bunch of farmers with our miller, and what hit me is that we've done something that can do another thing. Like, we've done something successful, and what are you going to do with that? And I kind of got that clarity. So we sat down with some farmers and said, look, I understand you guys are great farmers, taking care of your soil, doing the right thing. And we need great grain. And I'd like to know how I can help you do more of what you're doing, because I think our business will be better for it. And so we started this conversation where they're growing stuff for us, and we're kind of creating our own bread from that. And we developed a philosophy of, like, instead of just asking the mill for like a certain amount of flour, the whole chain needs to be talking from farmer to miller to baker. And we, instead of the baker saying what they want, you actually should ask the farm, what do you want to grow that's good for your land? And that thing will be nutritious, right? It'll be something that he wants to do. It'll be right for his community. Then we figure out how to mill it, and then we bake it because we have skills. Right? And what a different world that is than saying, hey, farmer, grow this for me. And then they're changing upside down to make sure there's enough hydration, enough ash, enough protein, and this kind of thing. We say, look, let's work with, the land, let's work from the land to the product. And I think that's what people do more in coffee and wine. And, why aren't we doing that in grain? And so I thought that was, for me, a great moment to think, we've made it somehow, because now I can have this conversation and it will materially change the society we live in. We're doing co-farming with another guy, Henry Astor, up in Brewer Farms, and that's really intense. Like, what should we grow together? And then we'll figure out how to make it. And then we're a wider net to just making sure that things are soil positive. We understand now what matters. And I feel like Gail's is in the center of all this like incredible science, technology, so people can understand what's happening, measurements, health, gut science, all this stuff. We're doing whatever we can to say, let's move this world better. I know that some decisions we make, won't be perfect, but we have to go with the science and go with what we think is right. You have to change. The old system is not healthy. The new system can be healthy.
It can be, but there's a lot of big food out there, like big pharma, big food.
Yeah.
It's and they're very powerful, aren't they? Very strong. And Gail's is a fabulous success, but it's
but we're tiny
Very
compared
small.
to them. Yeah, no,
in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, that's why when I see people say that we've grown and grown really fast, like, look, I've tried to double this business every 3 to 5 years if I can. Sometimes I had to stop growth till we figured it out. But we absolutely are small. The change that needs to happen is huge. And we're still such a small part of this. But I'm not going to stop, and I don't think our customers or most people want us to stop. They want us to do the right thing. And don't lose your sense of purpose as you grow. And we won't. I would never be able to attract the quality of bakers and the quality of food people to our business if I didn't allow their mindset to rule.
Mm.
You will lose you will lose people, and people deliver you the results.
Mm. How have you funded your growth? You had a funding round at one point, didn't you?
Yeah, and I took probably a much different path than most craft businesses did, and I think that they struggle. They struggle with cash, and so they're great at making products, but they struggle when it gets to the complexity that comes after that, and some of that complexity is around finance and cash flows and things that you need to do to keep a business running and to survive crises, right? So yes, in 2011 I got an investor in. And they understood retail and property.
It's Luke Johnson, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Luke.
Who lots of listeners will be familiar with, I'm sure.
Yeah, he knew property quite well, and then he had more financial resources than we had. So I knew, like, if I'm going to be taking a bunch of families, hundreds of families on a journey, right? I don't want to be the person that's risking it all.
And how many employees did you have at this point?
I told you we started out with 35, and then when we had 2011. We probably had 600.
Okay.
500 maybe.
Okay. And how many sites at this point? Yeah.
We had 7.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 7.
That's nice. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then, could you have an 8th in London? I didn't know retail. What I did know is there was a lot of people who were doing retail and doing kind of customer-facing stuff and property, and I didn't understand that at all. What I thought I really understood, and he would leave me alone with that, is like us as makers.
Right. How difficult a decision was it to, take funding to seed part of the business? Did it feel a significant change when it happened?
I think it was a big decision, but I think I was really intentional about who was going to do this with us. So when I had the investor, it was extremely important to select them, and I was brutal about who I selected, and I just didn't. If I didn't get the right feeling, I just said no. Do you respect the process? Do you respect all the bakers? Do you understand that this business is run by bakers, not even by me? So you're talking to me, but I listen to the bakers and I do what the bakers. If I go against what the bakers do, I have no business left. And like, yeah, no problem. But we should do this and that. And Luke didn't do that. He just said, go for it. I help you where I can. You let me know. Mm. And I think we did a second round 3-4 years ago. We were 100 sites about. We had probably 2,000 employees. At that point, there was 25 people, that were really interested, and it got down to 2, and then those 2 joined together to be our major investor.
Okay.
And so, and they had, again, a pretty deep appreciation for, like, let these guys go. We're there to make sure that there's a crisis, and there have been lots of crises, right?
For example?
Well, there's COVID, right? There's the
yeah.
huge labor crisis that came after we did this deal before. Where were people? Post-COVID, and supply chains were up in arms. And, I needed somebody that was not in the muck with me to kind of help me see what's going on and what might it look like in 6 months so I can kind of prepare for it. Mm-hmm. You need that. So so I have welcomed in 2 investors. I didn't sell, to help us think about things that normally craft businesses might not have the resources to think about. And I've given away a bit of the business to have that, but I think I'd rather have a bigger pie, create something more meaningful, than to have a smaller pie that's not as impactful, but you control more.
But honestly, how much of a challenge has it been for you to cede a little bit of control?
Yeah, but I don't cede that much control. I don't feel like I do.
You have someone that you have to answer to, though, let's be honest, right?
Yeah, okay.
A bit.
Yeah, but you always have to answer to somebody, to a banker or somebody. You can't do it all on your own. Or if you do, you're just inconsequential. You have to operate in an ecosystem. So I think I've got people that help me with that side of the business. I don't really want to live in la land. I don't think an entrepreneur does. I mean, I want to lower uncertainty. I want to raise certainty that we will be successful, right? To do that, it's better that somebody challenges me before the wave comes than after, right? So I'm a surfer, right? It's great if you got a surfer, or even if he's not a surfer, he's just out swimming. You're going, dude, there's a big set coming in. You better get out. Okay. He's helped me out. Let me know what's happening that I couldn't see. And so I think, again, it's back to diversity. Like, do you want, diversity is pretty hard to hold, right? Everybody talks about how great it is to have diversity of thought, diversity of, experiences, skills, all that. I've brought in little diversity that's in the finance and investor world, and I think it's paid off.
Mm. Talk to me about Gail's place on the high street. There have been, mutterings, haven't there, about, you come to the high street and you gentrify it and you drive out the local shops, the small cafes and so on. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think this has been a discussion that's been around even since I was young in my hometown. Things have to change. Do they always change in the right way or not? Some people like the way it changes and some people don't. I think our high streets are, in general, they're suffering, right? And they need life, and they need people to breathe life into those spaces. We always take pretty small places. We're talking 1,000 or 2,000 square feet. And I also expect that we have to earn our right to be there every time. But I totally understand the whole discussion around independent versus chain and like what role do you play on the high street. I can tell you that the role that we want to play is a very positive one. It improves the choice that you have and diversity. I think the challenge that high street has is about getting people out of their homes or away from the TV or a computer and into some social place. And, I think that we can add to that. So why would you not appreciate something new that's trying to do a really great job and trying to add something to society to not want them in, I think is a bit short-sighted.
But you're one of the big guys now, aren't you? You I guess some...
But every place is little, right? And every village. So yeah, we need to make sure that we treat every place like it's the local bakery, and it might be one of 2 or 3 local bakeries. That's okay. Or 2 or 3 independent food places. We can enjoy them all. It's not a fixed set, right? We need to get people out of their homes, off their phones, into a place that's great. And I don't expect anybody's going to eat all their food from Gail's. I don't even want them to. But they won't, right?
Most people couldn't afford to. A lot of people couldn't afford to.
Yes, you need choice and diversity.
Aren't you? I mean, let's talk about the price point.
Yeah. I think you'd be surprised that the difference is pretty small. And I think that's kind of, could be 10, 15%. And when you're talking about something that's 2 or 3 pounds, that's not a big difference. But look, it does cost more to make good food and to source the right food and to do it the right way. I don't apologize for that, and I don't apologize for any farmer that we work with that's doing the hard work to not just chase calories and yields. Mm. It's just not pricing something high. It's actually giving you something different.
Mm. In this country, we have a bit of we call it a tall poppy syndrome. And I'm sure you're familiar with this.
Sure.
When something's successful, we like to kind of chop it down and cut them down to size a little bit. And I have noticed that the press, certain areas of the press, enjoy criticising. A while ago, there was some fuss about, do you wrap your sandwiches? And if you don't wrap your sandwiches, should you wrap them? And do you waste too much? And all that kind of thing. How do you deal with that sort of attention? Which comes with the territory of being a success and a visible success.
Yeah, I think that's really hard. I've struggled with that the last couple of years as we've become more kind of known. I know why we make decisions, and I try to explain to the journalists, why we've made them. They're always from a food space and like caring about like minimal waste and the best product that we can do, and we make mistakes as well. But I find it really difficult. I think we're trying to learn how to communicate better. With people and the press. I can't change the press. I think we need to get better at just making sure people understand all the good stuff that's happening. We need to eat better. We need to eat better for our health, and we need to treat food as with some respect. You talk about us being expensive. I think some of the problem is other food is just too cheap, right? And, you can pump stuff with chemicals and it'll last forever, and you can focus on yields and just how much can I get out and how many calories do I get out. But that is not food. That is not the food system that I want. I think there's enough people that believe that as well. Not everybody will. I'm not trying to change everybody's mind. I'm just trying to say there is a choice here. You can go and get the cheapest food. I think it's cheap for a reason. We will not waste your money. We will run a proper business, a craft business that is food-led, chef quality, and the food people are in charge.
Can we get back to the brand?
Sure.
Piper talks about building brand legends and the importance of a brand staying resolutely true to their purpose. You have talked about this really interestingly, but can you kind of distill it? What is Gail's purpose?
Well, right now it's to feed people better, right, and play a part in improving the food system in the UK. This has evolved, right? When we first started, we just wanted to celebrate bread, and then when we moved past one or two, it's like this all should be more accessible. A brand is the articulation, kind of the people behind it, right? And what they feel like they want, what gets them up in the morning. It shouldn't be that you have to run across town to get a good loaf of bread, then you have to go to the other side of town to get a good slice of meat, and then these things why aren't they more accessible? And you can see, like, Christmas Eve, we sell like 8 times the amount of bread that you normally would on a normal Saturday, and so that tells me that, like, basically people, they know when there is an event, when they want to have the best dinner of the year, good bread is part of that. So
breaking bread, it's very basic thing,
right.
Isn't it?
And it's one of the least expensive things that you can buy that's world class, right? So if you're going to buy the most expensive meat on the market or the most expensive, carrots or potatoes, bread is probably the least expensive of all those.
What is it then, do you think, that makes, back to this idea of the brand legend, what makes you better and different? Because other people do bread.
Yeah, sure.
So what makes you better? What makes you different?
Well, first of all, we're not just buying stuff in and selling it, right? We're makers, and I think that's in our DNA, and it's everything we do. So it's we're linked all the way back into the people who do the ingredients, and I think that shows. People who are just buying and like just creating the end product, or just buying in the end product and then selling it. It's different amongst the makers. What's different? I think we've accepted some responsibility to go to a wider audience and take the heat for some of that. And that's because we believe as a team that we can, that impact is important, and being able to share that with as many people as possible. That's the difference between us and smaller guys. And we actually, we love that. That doesn't mean that people just want to do amazing. There's anything wrong with that, right? We just want to be amazing and share it widely, and I think we have the capability and the skills and and the backing and stuff to do that. In the food segment, there's so much improvement to be had that I call out all entrepreneurs, any young person, to go and grab this opportunity, because people need to eat better, and it's not going to happen without people going in and saying, "I'm doing that."
How do you talk to your customers? What's your tone of voice? You've got a great website, I must say.
Oh, thanks.
Lovely films and very, very uplifting and interesting as well. So, how do you communicate with your customer base?
I really think our main communication is it's one-on-one with our teams and those customers. I think it's almost a superpower that when you have 180 places in different neighborhoods, you're talking to almost 1 million people a week, like we are now. You just like, that's gold. And how do we do that? I mean, we have a set of values. So one of them is definitely just be authentic. Not everybody's going to know all the depth of what our food guys know, but you can represent it, and you can represent it by being generous, kind, and helpful. And so we talk to them through our products and through these experiences at a Gail's.
And who is your customer?
It's not an age group. It's not a gender. It's people who care about food, period. If you go into a Gail's, there's young people, old people, there's different ethnic groups. We've never been able to figure that out. People come from school or they come in from work. you're a worker in a construction site and you're buying our sausage roll. I mean, that's a Gail's in the morning. I'm sorry, it's not Saabs and Land Rovers and pushchairs all the time. It's just not.
No.
And I think that.
Does it frustrate? I think you're a bit frustrated.
Of course, it frustrates me because it's like, and also why, the posh bakery thing. It's like trying to label something that shouldn't be labeled. This is an open place with an open door policy, and it's good food and it costs, a bit more, but man, does it taste amazing and is it well thought out? And, you don't have to have a fancy car to be able to afford that. And Gail's makes really good food much more accessible. And we believe that, and that's what we're there to do, and we'll do more of it. And we do have critics that you gather along the way, but I think you have to just say, I understand what you're getting at. I think most of the time I kind of get it, but I don't. I think they're missing the bigger picture. They're overly focusing on some negative things.
On the yummy mummies. And
some people are just mean. Some people are just mean.
Yeah, there is that.
Yeah, they want to pigeonhole, and they want to kind of, they're shortcuts. Like, I'm not there to force anybody or to even degrade the person who's making a different choice. I like a good Kit Kat every once in a while. I'll have a Coca-Cola all the time, but you'll never see Coca-Cola in Gail's, and I'll have an occasional one, but I don't think it's. So it's not about being purist. It's just about like having choice and living a fun, interesting, healthy, mostly healthy life.
Going forward, what's the plan? You're mostly south of England, but I know you're in Manchester and you have a bit more than northern now. Ambitions beyond England? Do you plan to expand abroad? Where are we going with this?
Well, definitely the UK. I think there's a lot more to do. And that's just there's lots of offers still in the food system that I think there's lots of room for improvement and new ideas. I've gotten to know quite a few craft bakers in like places like Madrid and in Germany and in Italy, in Scandinavia, U.S. Did a West Coast trip. It was super fun. Mm-hmm. I really love what's going on in this craft world across the developed world, which has gotten very industrialized food, and we're all going to say, actually, we need to make some room for some good stuff and some healthy stuff.
So is this a brand that could go international?
I think it could. But there's people already doing things well in those places. So what role do I play? Maybe our role is just the UK, but I think, but I've had some really good conversations with people in other places, and I think it's so let's say it's possible, but there's nothing clear yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't feel compelled to have to go somewhere else. I think what the UK has is a really rich system with lots of opportunities. And I wonder whether it'd be healthy for us and for somebody else to stretch our boundaries outside the UK. It's still a question.
Talking of stretching boundaries, I'm wondering whether, or how you as a CEO see yourself. Do you see yourself outgrowing the business as CEO? Do you see yourself thinking, okay, I want to move on. I've done that. I've proved my point. Job finished.
No, that's the problem. I think.
Never?
It's your baby? I think no, it's not my baby. It is for teams to evolve and for people to take my role. Like, I'll never lose the co-founder role, I guess, because that's what you are.
Would you sell?
There are people that are just like, I just want to end this thing and move on. It's not really, it's a bit more embedded in my life a bit than that. But I do want other people to come in, and I need to make room for them. So I told you before, one of the greatest gifts Gail gave us is she said, here, take what I've created and that we've co-created for 10 years almost, and do what you can with it. Don't mess it up. Do good. Do something great. And wow. I guess if you ask me, that's kind of how I'd like to respond. Is basically, I hope this thing and this. There's always a group of people that want to make our food system better, and I think this is a great way to go about it. It's not the only way, and for those people, I step aside and you go for it.
But in conclusion, Tom Molnar, he didn't mess it up.
Yes, right. Try not to anyway.
It's lovely to meet you. Thank you for talking to me.
Nice to meet you as well.